Hey guys, and welcome back to the Science of Exercise. This is episode number 5 of the R.A.N.T Podcast, and today I'm joined by Dr. Nic Martinez on the topics of focus and attention. I think both of these topics are super important, especially with everything that's going on. Everybody's getting so distracted with being stuck inside and not being able to go do the things that we normally would. So I think this is going to be a very important topic for you guys and will provide a lot of benefit. If you have not already given this channel a subscribe, please go ahead and do so. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort and it's free. So go ahead and subscribe down below.
So the next one is focus. Focus is, you hear it all the time. Just focus. You'll be fine. Just focus. It's something that sounds so easy. Yeah, it's a buzzword and it sounds easy. You just do it. Duh. I don't think it's that easy, personally. And I think that there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of ideas and concepts for me when it comes to focusing. You have to create enough vision to see what you need to see, but there's also a lot that you have to block out. And how do you filter out between what's necessary information versus what's unnecessary? And that's kind of what focus is to me at the end of the day. It's being able to place the attention on what you need to and making sure that you don't, quote unquote, get distracted from the things that are unnecessary. So how do you do that? And then is that what you would believe to be a decent description of focus, or would you add to that?
I think that's a good way to define it. The device that we talked about earlier, the NeuroTracker, trains you to develop your ability to focus. And so an example on that device is that you'll have 8 targets, and you'll have 8 objects, and four of those 8 objects are actual targets, and you're responsible for tracking those targets amongst the other objects as they're moving in this 3D space. And so now we can get back into, well, how long can you do that for? Can I do it for 15 seconds, for 30 seconds, for a minute? Or how many sessions can I do before I start to become fatigued? And so that's where the training aspect of mental performance comes into play. Like you can talk about mental performance all day long until you put it into actual action, whether it's on the field, whether it's in the lab, and start working on the individual's ability to maintain that focus. It doesn't really help just to yell those buzzwords in the middle of competition. So you have to train for it. You have to be prepared for it. You have to put individuals into scenarios that they're able to test whether they're able to maintain focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it basically is the ability to handle information and gather it quickly, but making sure that you're gathering the right information. I kind of add that with a little bit of a question mark because that's just, again, kind of my simple interpretation.
And I think it depends on the task. So if the task is, someone that's in the military and they're actually having to use their peripheral vision in addition to maintaining focus on a target, that's a whole nother level of focus and attention, right?
Okay. So context. Context for sure.
Yes. I think context is important in comparison to sport, to where maybe the peripheral vision is not as important, and I don't mean to say important, but as critical as it is in a life or death situation, and you only have one opponent that you're worried about. Maybe the peripheral vision of the crowd is not very important, and obviously it's not. We shouldn't be listening to the crowd because that makes you less mentally tough. So that's I think context is important to consider there relative to how to maintain focus, and then training for that specific environment in order to develop it.
So, per the usual, as annoying as it sounds, said principle kind of wins again, right? You gotta make sure you're putting yourself under the demand of that sport. I've seen actually
in everything.
I've seen football practices now at the college level actually chiming in. Maybe it was the Seahawks. I don't know if it's the NCAA, but I'm about 99% sure that I saw a team piping in as much crowd noise as they could during their practice.
Yeah. Right.
So that makes sense. You got to prep for your situation at the end of the day,
Yeah, and that's a way that you can train. You can put individuals in front of a device such as the neuro tracker, try to get them to maintain focus and give them a stimulus that facilitates a little bit of stress in that particular environment, whether it's a lab or whether it's a classroom. In addition to that, you could put a loudspeaker in there and put some crowd noise on and some heckling as they're trying to get through these tasks to really test how resilient they are to those challenges. So
that's why I faltered so much.
There's ways and means to achieve more mental toughness.
I'm gonna say that's why I faltered so much when I did the neuro tracker. You were heckling me in the background the whole time.
Oh, so, no, I wasn't.
You definitely were. It was unreal. I couldn't even focus. You were actually like messing with my chair, trying to blind me. It was unreal. But I get it. You got to do what you got to do. Play to win. Play to win.
Play to win.
All right. So
if I can add a little bit to the attention part. So, we've talked about this in class a little bit, and so if we're talking about an individual that we want them to be mentally tough, we could think of them as a bus or as a train, right? I used to train a guy that his literal nickname in the ring is the train. A lot of guys like to consider just being like the bus, and so it's the Tyler bus. And on the Tyler bus, you can have a lot of individuals that are occupying the bus. You could have coaches that sit on the bus. You can have teammates that sit on the bus. You could have bystanders that sit on the bus. But at the end of the day, it's in your mind, it's the Tyler bus, right? In order for you to perform optimally. Yeah. And so on that bus, you need to pay attention because you're the actual driver. Nobody else drives the bus but you. If anybody else is driving the bus, you have a problem, right? Yeah. Nobody should drive the Tyler bus. And so when you're driving your bus, you need to pay attention to the road, and you can't get from point A to point B if you're focused on what's happening in the third row in the back. If your neck's turned around and seeing what's happening all the way in the back row. If you're looking at the person on the side of the street, meanwhile you're driving 50 on a 2-lane highway, that could be problematic. So attention is key, right? Attention to what? In this particular scenario, it's attention to the road. And that's why with time and experience, what you end up with is, this hypnotic state. So a lot of times, Tyler, you've probably driven from point A to point B in heavy traffic and gotten there and realized, I don't even remember how I got here.
I can't even tell you how many times I've done that. Can't even tell you.
Yeah. It's in heavy traffic and challenging situations. Yeah. And it's because you've done it so much that it's hypnotic and you do it automatic. Right. And so really you do it subconscious and building confidence is part of, getting experience. Gaining experience will help build your confidence in particular environments, in particular spaces. And so that part of attention is important, but it's not just enough for you to pay attention to the road. You also have to apply action to what it is you're doing to drive the bus effectively. And so to drive that bus, you got to be able to step on the gas pedal. You have to turn the wheel. You have to, if it's a stick shift, you have to, shift into the gear. So put on the blinker, open the door for the bystanders and the bus riders to get on the bus. So think of those concepts of taking, those are ways of describing taking action in this particular analogy that we're using. And so you have to be able to not only pay attention to what's happening, but also take action on it. And those two variables are critical to mental toughness. I know we said that quite a few elements are critical to it, but attention and action are key for the practical application of it.
Okay. So making sure that you're quite literally doing something about it, but, being able to be aware of it at the same time. So
yeah, and that's where we get into the stress aspect, because the first time you got in a car, right, you were paying attention, but it was hard for you to take action. You're like, what do I do? How do I do this? And so there, what we have is fight, flight, or freeze. So now we can bring in stress management into this concept of mental toughness. You were so overwhelmed by the moment that you were unable to shift the gear, to turn the steering wheel, to know how hard to press the gas pedal. I mean, when you're 15 with your learner's permit, that stuff can be challenging for some people. And so it's just a raw, crude analogy to use for gaining confidence, experience, and overcoming those fears that we have.
Right. So something I keep hearing over and over is awareness. We've said awareness for resilience. We've said awareness for now focus. So being very aware, self-aware, and it just seems like that's like a constant. You got to make sure that you're self-aware of your situation, regardless if you're, again, trying to be resilient against something. You have to make sure that you're aware of what you're being resilient against and how you're handling it. But then the same thing with focus, making sure that you're aware of what you're even trying to focus on, and making sure that you're not focusing on the things that are unnecessary, like all the other things that could happen while you're driving. You got to make sure that you're focusing on the road and not worrying about, as a bus driver, all the people heckling in the background and chattering and, talking smack or, whatever. You got to make sure that you're paying attention to get the passengers there safely. You can't focus on them fully.
Right. And so that kind of goes back to what we talked about related to one of those tools of discipline, which is, are you responsible for paying attention to everything? Is that neurotic? Yeah. If you're doing too much versus, this guy's not even driving the bus. He's got one hand on the wheel and on the phone and turned around. He doesn't really have that much attention to the road. The responsibility is out the window with that individual driving the bus. And so there we can kind of see where the balance is needed, again, for that concept.
Man, that hits hard too, because I would say I struggle. And, again, I'm bringing this back to me, but I struggle greatly with going.
We all struggle.
I struggle greatly with the concept of being an expert in everything that I do. I feel like I have to, quote unquote, be a perfectionist. And I know that this is another thing that is another topic that we could potentially bring up, time permitting. But I want to be the best at everything that I do. And I realize that you can't necessarily do that. We have experts in the field on certain topics for a reason, because you have to make sure that you can create the attention and the awareness around a couple of things, not everything. You can't do everything. And that's something that I'm coming to terms with as I'm finishing up this master's degree here in the next semester. So is I wanted to be really good at everything. And although that's great to strive for, at the end of the day, it's borderline impossible. I cannot talk about affect the way that you can. I cannot talk about mental performance the way you can. That is your area of expertise, and trying to find what you want to focus on sometimes can be difficult. It's not the idea of focusing on something, but picking the thing that you want to focus on.
Yeah, and I think you gravitate to what you're most passionate about. And if you just have a lot of passions, which could be the case, a lot of people may have more than just one passion, and it's okay to do that. But if you really wanted to narrow down what it was that you could make as your primary focus, then you kind of have to sit with those thoughts and which thought gives you the best feeling. Can you see yourself, your feet hitting the ground and doing this particular thing every day, all day, for the rest of your life? Like you want to make your mark in that particular area. Would that give you a good feeling? Does it make you feel good, just the thought of it, in comparison to something else that you also want to be good at, but maybe it doesn't give you the same feeling? Like that's not something necessarily that you want to manifest for the rest of your life. And so I think sitting with those ideas is important. But there is something to be said about whether it's a strength conditioning coach or whether it's a exercise physiologist and related to helping other people or training and fitness and health and wellness, it is good to be a jack of all trades. Sure. There's nothing wrong with being, well versed in those dimensions of wellness that we talked about earlier, or a lot of different areas of exercise science which are going to benefit your clients or benefit the athletes. If you were to just focus on, I'm just the squat guy, then you're going to be really, really good at, training people to squat.
Yeah.
Right? But what about when it comes to the bench, when it comes to the deadlift, or if we throw all those lifts out the window, what about when it comes to anaerobic training or HIIT training and the cardiovascular adaptations that occur in that realm? So, to be a niche kind of person, I think is great, but I think it works better in academia to say, I'm going to focus on this research. I'm going to brand my research. I'm going to develop a culture around this idea. And then that's an area that you can grow really well in that space. But when it comes to just overall training, I think your approach to being a jack of all trades is critical to you being effective at your job.
That's well said. That makes me definitely take a different perspective on the things that not only do I enjoy, but that my clients quite literally, require for the best possible evidence-based practice that I can provide them. So that makes me feel a little bit better about being so critical and really enjoying a little bit of everything, and not necessarily finding one thing that I have to focus on all the time. And I think that's important too for clients and practice. You don't just potentially, unless you've got a marathon or you got a specific thing coming up, but you don't want to just be good at hip abduction. You want to be good at various movement patterns. So I like the context there for the difference between the two fields of potentially academia being more focused, or as a surgeon, you'd probably want to be really good at one type of surgery, or maybe very few. But as a
just consider yourself more like a trauma surgeon, where you have to be good at everything, right? You're not a knee surgeon or a shoulder surgeon. You're trauma surgeon.
There you go. Well said.
You have to be good at it all.
I agree.